Boisai, it's, we're in an Eis Tzara, so we need to talk about Parshas Noach. Also, we'll get there. But first of all, in times like this, it's important not to be hopeful, rather to be helpful. Being hopeful is to be on the receiving end of an unfolding reality, passively hoping that things will get better, but that's not our way. Like, one second, excuse me. Yeah, but that's not our way. Our way is really to be responsible. In other words, to respond and work hard to shape a different reality. As the pasuk says, "Betach b'Hashem v'asei toiv." Betachin is not about just doing nothing and hoping. It's betach b'Hashem v'asei toiv. And each and every one of us has to ask himself how he could help. The Mishnah says in the end of Soita, the Mishnah describes the matzav of Ikvasa the Mashiach, how terrible things will become. The Mishnah says, amongst other things, Chochmois Soifrim Tisrach, Yirei Hashem Yimasu, Va'emes Teheina Ederes, Na'orim Pneiz Kenim Yalbinu, Zekenim Yamdu, Mipnei Ktanim, Ben Menavel Av, Bas Komo Be'imo, Vekalo Bechamoisa, Oive Ish Anshe Beisoi, Pnei Ador Kepnei Akelev, Habein Eino Mizbayish Me'oviv, Valma Yeshlonu Lihishoin, Alavinu Shebashomayim. So the simple pshat in the Mishnah is that when things are so terrible, things are so bad, so all you can do is rely on the Rebbeinu Shalom. Al mi yesh lanu li'ishoin al avinu shebashamayim. What Rebbe Chanan Wasserman in the Kovetz Ma'amorim in Siman Yud Oy Zayin brings in the name of Reb Chaim Volozhin that the last line of the Mishnah, Val mi yesh lanu li'ishoin, is also one of the klolas. And he says, and this is the biggest klola of Ikvas the Mashiach, that people will despair and they will give up and they'll say, Al mi yesh lanu li'ishoin al avinu shebashamayim, only the Rebbeinu Shalom can help, and they won't do anything to change the state of affairs. So being hopeful is a curse. We're not supposed to be hopeful. We're supposed to do what we can to change reality. That's being helpful. How? Avada, we can't all help in the same way. I mean, trying to do what you can't do just adds to the frustration. But Avada, everybody has to think how we can help in a practical way. Those that are suffering, those that are in danger, how he could assist, how we can help, how we can encourage. But there's, as a general rule, we can all help, as the Rambam says in Hilchas Tshuva, that tzorech ha'adam sheyira atzmai kol hashana kula, ki'ilu chetziyoi zakai v'chetziyoi chayiv, v'chein kol ha'olam kuloi, ki'ilu chetziyoi chayiv v'chetziyoi zakai, choto chet echad, Hare hichriya atzmai v'hichriya kol ha'olam lekaf choiva v'goram lo hashchose. Also mitzvah achas. Hare hichriya atzmai v'hichriya kol ha'olam kuloi lekaf schus v'goram lohem teshua v'hatzola. U'mepnei inyan zeh nago kol beis Yisrael laharbois b'tzdoko b'maisim tovim v'lasik b'mitzvahs mirishon ad yom kippurim yesem mikol hashana. In any case, in the time of din, avada, it's a special mechayev lirois es atzmoi v'eskol ha'olam kuloi chetziyoi chayev v'chetziyoi zakai, and to understand the significance and the great meaning of every good deed that we do and refraining from anything negative. They even say in science there's the butterfly effect, that a butterfly flaps its wings and it can impact the direction of a tornado. So Avada, we have to believe that everything we do, everything we think, everything we are oisik in, makes a difference in the whole world. Whether we see it, we don't see it, whether it's in the short run, whether it's in the long run. You know, the Gemara in the beginning of Psachim says that when the Mishnah says, Or la'arba asar, boitkin esachometz la'or haner, so Or la'arba asar really means the night of Arba Asar. And the reason that the Mishnah says Or is because it's a lishna ma'alya. It's a more, it's a better word. It's a more positive word. So what's the source for lishna ma'alya? The source is in this week's parsha. The Gemara brings that Rabbi Shimon ben Levi said, "La'olam al yotzi adam davar meguna mipiv shaharei ikeim hakosuf shmoina oisius v'lo yotzi davar meguna mipiv." The pasuk says, uses 8 extra oisius in order not to be moitzi a davar meguna mipiv. Diksiv min habehema hatahoira umin habehema asher einena tahoira. So asher einena tahoira is 8 letters longer than saying hatmeya. So this is the source that one should talk lishne ma'alya. Avada, it's not a coincidence that the source for this idea of al yoitzi adam davar meguna mipiv are in the diburim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that are shayach to Noach's entering the teva mipnei mei hamabul. The Rabbeinu Yonis says that the Isser of Lashon Meguna is a syog for nivel peh and Lashon Hora and atolas doifi bebrios. Now over here we're talking about a time when it's mola ha'aretz chamos. Hishchis kol basar es darkoi al ha'aretz. Even behema chaya va'oif nizkokin l'she'enon minon. So in such a time, we should be mahader and mesalsel in our dibur, that we should talk in a lashon nekiyah asher einena tahira, and not call a spade and say hatmeya. We're dealing with a time and place where hishchis kol basar is darkoi al haaretz. It's enough that Noach is a tzaddik b'doirosav l'fi erech his dor. What's shayach now to talk about such sensitivities in lashon? Obviously, the message is that in order to have a teva, to save oneself from the mayim zeidonim of a world that's decadent and falling apart, it's not enough to be makpid on the shuras hadin. It's not enough to do what's right and to stay away from doing what's wrong, but one has to even be more mahader. One has to be sensitive to lashon she'eino nekiyah, dafke in a time when the world is falling apart. You know, there's a very interesting Hagdama. Now, before we get to that Hagdama, I want to say, the Chazal say that Haroya soite bekilkulo yazir atzmai min hayayin. That's why nismach Parshas nazir Parshas soite. So the Welt asks, what do you mean? Haroya soite bekilkulo. There's less of a chance that he's going to be going that way. He sees what happens to the soita, bitna tzova yerecha noifelas. He sees the crime and the punishment. So why is he going to be attracted to that lifestyle? Why is he going to be impacted? Why dafke he should be yazir atzmei min hayayin? Adirab, somebody that didn't see the soita b'kula maybe needs to be yazir atzmei min hayayin, but somebody that already saw the soita b'kula, what are we worried about? So it could be that the pshat is like this: when you see a soita b'kula, you see how low a person can stoop. You see how far down a person can fall. And since we know that B'Tselem Elokim Asa Es Ha'adam is really about free choice, And we know that Zeh L'Uma Zeh Oso Elokim. We know that if one can go so far down, it must be that he can go so far up. And therefore, the message that he should take out of seeing something so horrible is that he can be not just good, but he can be excellent. He can be not just excellent, he can reach a madrega of Nezer Eloikov al Roishoy. He can become a Nazir that, in a sense, his Kedusha is even more than the Kedusha of a Kohen Gadol, as it's mavur in the beginning of the 6th parak in Nazir. So the Roya Saita B'Kol Kula, his response to the Roya Saita B'Kol Kula is Yazir Atzmei Min Hayayin, that he becomes even holier than holy. He becomes much more than he would otherwise even consider he's capable of, because he sees that a person is capable of falling so low. So that brings him to the Hakara, that if a person can fall so low, he can move so high up there. And therefore, Haroya Saita B'Kol Kula Yazir Atzmei Min Hayayin. So it's dafke in a time of Hishchis Kol Basa Es Darkim in Haaretz that we get the message that we should not just not be that way, but we should be medaktik and mesalsel in using the most sensitive words and not being moitzi mipirva loshen she'ena nekiya. Yes, so I want to read to you the Hakdama of Rav Ruderman to his Sefer Avodas Levi that he published in 1930, which was a very difficult time for Yiddishkeit, as we all know, and those that don't know should find out. So he writes, "Bepesach Hashar loy eshales atzmi oison she'elois she'noyagin harbe mechabrim lishol bepsichas sifreim." I won't ask myself the question that many authors ask themselves in the opening of their sefer, Kein, as Haruya hi hashosha onu chayim bolo hitzah svarim chadoshim. Is this a time for publishing new svarim? Ani lo yeshal, because I won't ask such a question, because kuchibri kuchadabil popula doiraisa. Harber revavis mi Yisrael oiskim bechelik ha'alocha shebetoyre v'alizeu kiyumoy shel amenu. Yeah, that's what keeps our people alive. Shelei posak piv mi girse af b'tkufois hayoyse noirois, even in the most difficult times. Kol rechushenu haruchani ha'anoki kemat noilad v'noitzar bezmane onyenu umerudenu. Our whole rechush, our whole ruchnistik rechush was created in the most difficult times. Chavi kimaat rega ad yavar zam loy nemar al yitziras haruach. The yitziras haruach are all times. Loy nischabenu af rega loy posaknu liyatzer av zman kot v'zeh kol ashreinu piarnu v'kishatnu es toirasenu b'tzitzim u'prochim. We beautified our Torah. Av b'shois sheyiridois ruchoniyos sorubon. Hamayan hachai loy posak mabuoy. Kol dor v'dor v'soifrov. Kol soifre v'kishrei noisov. Loy mona milegalois es pri ruchoy leishtativ bebinyan ha'anoki. Dover zeh moving lakoil v'enei tzorech lefonim. And now he says, Hanovi Chagai. She'es nevu oisov nibo. When did Chagai say his prophecies? B'tkufes yerida ruchonis noirah. At a time of a great spiritual decline, the Golus Bavel, that had a terrible impact on Eden. Be'ez rabim mehashovim nosu nosim noshim nachriyos. Many Eden Rachmanu Litzlan intermarried during that short time that we were in Bavel. Chilalu es haShabbos ubechol zois kishebochan nevi hatkufa ha'ayuma hazois es hakoyanim. When he fahered the kohanim, when they came back to Eretz Yisrael to see if they could do the avodah, shalom she'elois beinyonei tumah v'tara rechoike hametzias. As the pasuk says in Chagai, hein yiso ish besar kodesh beknaf bigdoi v'noga beknofoi el halechem ve'el hanozid hayigdosh. So the Gemara in Psachim Daf Tezayin says revi b'kodesh echamishi b'kodesh boim mehem. So he says, I mean, it's a time people are intermarried, people are being mechal Shabbos, and he's talking about revi b'kodesh, chamishi b'kodesh. The Torah says, yeah. He says just because there are people that are committing suicide, a living person doesn't stop caring for his life in every way. So he says, even if people are throwing everything away, we stick to our Torah in a way, in every way, and every detail is important to us, So I'm saying that in a time like this, I mean, it's not enough. I mean, they talk about crimes against humanity. Crimes against humanity really means, I'm not going to dash in the meaning of crimes against humanity, but it's not against humans. It's against humanity, meaning that these crimes really have the potential to strip us of our humanity. In other words, when we see supposedly fellow members of the human race stoop so low, it makes us lose our trust in humanity, and it makes us feel that we're just behemoths. This is a time when Adirabba, this is a time when we have to bring up our Tzelem Elokim and rise to a higher Madrega in order to counterbalance the crimes against humanity. We have to bring our humanity to a new level. Every kind word, every word of encouragement, every toiva that we can do, every caring for another person, that's our response to such kind of crimes. So it's not enough to be angered and be saddened about Rahman al-San, so many misguided Yidden that demonstrate for Achzorium, like the Rambam says in the Moreh Nevuchim. People think it's a Maimon Chazal, but that Hamerachem al ha'achzorim is an achzor. Misplaced Rachmanis is a terrible, terrible problem. And it encourages achzorius. Hamerachem al ha'achzorim is an achzor, but it's not enough that we be angered. It's not enough that we be saddened. What we need to take responsibility. I mean, for all our fellow Jews, and the emes, and spread kindness, and spread emunah, and spread Torah, because that's our achrayus. That's our achrayus. It's all our people. It's all our brothers. Yeah, so that's besides for what the Gemara says in Sanhedrin. Ma yasa adam v'yinotzel michevle Moshiach yasik b'Torah b'gemilas chasodim. The way to be yinotzel michevle Moshiach is yasik b'Torah b'gemilas chasodim. Also, Rebbe Chanan in the Kovetz Mamarim says that you see from here that Torah is not enough, because in order for the Torah to protect us, you have to be also oisik b'gemilas chasodim. He doesn't explain why, but this is what it says in the Gemara, and he says, you see from here that Torah is not enough. A person has to be oisik also b'gemilas chasodim in order to be yinotzel michevle Moshiach. But we have to continue to do our thing, and not only continue to do our thing, but be'emes to do our thing better and bigger and greater, and come to a higher and greater madrega. Yeah, there's also once we're talking about a Hagdama, I'm going to read you the Hagdama of the Achiezer. Yeah, in 1922, Reb Chaim Oizer published his first sefer, and he writes like this in the Hagdama: Machshavos tuga misroitzitzos b'leiv choshev. Very saddening machshavos are in the heart of every thinking heart. Ha'im shas cheiron kazois, such a time of emergency, mechuvenes lohoitza svarim lo'or olam. Is this a time for publishing svarim? Halo yishal hashoyel am Yisrael toivea b'yam shel dmois. The Jewish people are sinking in a sea of tears. Va'atem oimrim shira. You're being mafalpul in Sugis Hashas. Maharseinu umakrivenu. Our destroyers mibayis umichutz, from inside and from outside. Choishrim chasiro tachas. He says that they are undermining the foundations of Torah. The chamorim murolim, with poisonous with poison. They're coming to destroy the whole binyan. You're trying to beautify it with a psanaya knage, another flower. Heichal Hashem kuloi boyer ba'esh. Halahava ochzes arena kodesh. The Aron Kodesh is burning. Haluchos va'agvilim mushkoim ba'esh. V'atem misaskim bekishut pirchei chemed. Ulam ze koyach Yisrael sabelei loikov v'leterosei b'chol adoris v'chol atkufis v'azman. Gam kishecherev chada hoysa munachas al tzavori. The Jewish people, even when it was a cherev chada munachas al tzavori, Toras Hashem hoysa shashu of kol hayon. Gam be'eis hachurben asher kol kiyum halo'um hoya b'sakona. Ubeis is chaskus hatzedoikim bayomim ohem. Lo yisichu aprushim rega mitoras Yisrael. Yavne v'chachomeo she'eris Yisrael hoysa ud mutzal me'esh. Asher ka'amud ha'onon heiru es Yisrael b'goylo, al yodam nishmar v'nimsar aksav ha'kabola. Al yidei Rabbi Seinu sheberetz Yisrael v'shebebovel nechtemu ha'talmudim ha'mishnah v'ha'gemora asher bohem atzurim kol moireshes ovois yisoidei ha'torah v'das rochel. Shom or zarua v'chol koich v'zoyar. Shom kol ruach Yisrael yigadel nafshoy. V'chol mokem sheholach Yisrael makel nedudim, wherever we went. Kol mokem shegol shchina imoy. V'shom heichen mishkan aholoi lilmoy Torah. U'miyoyim higolos Yisrael me'artzei lo nifseko ashalsholos ha'arucha me'eretz midal yidei ha'ga'oinim ha'mavarim ha'poiskim horishoinim v'acharoinim asher me'ashmad ha'gzeres ha'radifis v'atzaltulim omlu b'mesiris nefesh. L'hachin mochan. If you think about, I mean, the Shach and the Taz, I mean, in the kind of the periods that they were living during the Gzeres Tachtat, how they I mean, we in times of peace and tranquility, we're not even capable of doing a efes kotzeu of what they did, and they did that in the most difficult of times, and that is really what we stand for. That is what we are. That is what we live for. Yes. So he says, "Ha'anokim halolu, hinichu es hananasim." These giants allowed us midgets, lalois al kisfeim, to be on their shoulders. L'chazik b'chol dor v'dores abinyan hanisgav haneder b'kodesh asher kol kli yoytzer olav lo yutzlach lashbisa mitorah. And limud Torah l'zoichem bo is a samchayim, and that's how we established yeshivas and yeshivas, which are a fortress for Yiddishkeit. And the hispashtus of limud Torah is tris b'fnei apuronos. And then he says, Chazoin niflo ra'inu gam b'yomeinu. And this is in the time between the two wars, which was the most difficult time for Yiddishkeit. Families fell apart. Overwhelming majority of Yidden abandoned the ship of Yiddishkeit and were attracted to all kinds of isms, as you know. He says, Gam b'yomeinu b'yimei ha'milchama ha'noiro ha'kibushim v'hagirushim kasher nodad am Yisrael mitchum ha'shovel v'ito yachad ha'yeshivas belite u'bezamut hini b'chol mokom asher nisrakim shomei ze yeshuv v'yehi pneihem el heichel Hashem v'alev ha'uma v'ruach ha'torah v'amitzvah nishmasam kiptzom yachad v'gam shom lo yichod al ner tamid lahoyer v'achenu b'chol mokom hisamtzu b'chol oiz l'chazek ha'torah v'yeshivas. And then he says, "B'yichud niglas of klaster pnei ha'uma." Then we saw the beauty of the Jewish people. Toyar midoisav v'ruach Yisrael hamer ba'or ha'torah v'avas chesed b'achenu yelidim medinaseinu. The Litvish Yidden that emigrated to the United States, hamizgorim me'evel hayam ba'America u'b'shar arotzes asher yachad im ma'aseihem ha'gdolim v'ha'kabirim. Besides for all the great things they did, l'toivas alfei rivavois acheim ha'ashukim v'haretzutzim. They saved them from starvation and famine. Nosnu yodam lahachzik es oitzrois amenu haruchoniyim. V'hoidois as Ezras achenu tmimei deim shom asher lefleita ulemichyo sholchom elokim. Also lahachzik es moistes haTorah k'meoz ulechadesh pnei hachadorim v'yeshivas v'losis lahem tzurosam harashoyna legadil gdoilei Torah asher yiu lema'ores b'Yisrael. Hova nekava she'amayin hayoytze mikodesh hakadoshim Toras Chaim will bring the Jewish people back on the path. Now, you know, if you think about the legacy of yeshivas that we were brought up with, when was that created? It's mainly after the First World War, between the First and Second World War, which was a period of an unbelievable decline. I mean, all the yeshiva bachurim in Lita at the outbreak of the Second World War, it was 2,200 yeshiva bachurim. But from those yeshivas came the Gedolei Yisrael that the Hashgacha Pratis, survived the Holocaust and rebuilt Torah in all over the world, in Eretz Yisrael, in America. Think about the fact that Reb Aaron Kotler, he escaped from Slutsk during the First World War and established the yeshiva eventually after the war in Kletsk. In 1930, there was the Chanukas Abayis of the building of the yeshiva of Kletsk, for which Reb Aaron Kotler spent a lot of time raising money. And it was a major, major happening. Rabbi Issa Zalman came from Eretz Yisrael to Kletsk to be at the Chanukas Abayis. And 10 years later, it all fell apart. And Reb Aaron escaped to the United States and started all over again. Think about that koyach of staying committed and not giving up, not being hopeful, but being helpful, and doing what one can do to keep the flame of Yiddishkeit alive. It's also interesting that at that Chanukas Abayis in Kletsk was where somebody suggested to Reb Leizer Yudel Finkel that he said to him, and he writes about it, he said to him, listen, the Brisker Rav is sitting in Brisk. He took over the Rabbanos of Reb Chaim in 1918, and this is 1930. So the Brisker Rav is sitting in Brisk. He has so much to teach, but he has nobody to talk to. Wouldn't it be a good idea that you send a kvutza of Bachrim, of the best Bachrim from Mir, to learn by the Brisker Rav for 2 years, and they'll have gain so much from him, and they'll come back to Mir, and they'll raise the level of the yeshiva tremendously. So you'll only gain from the whole thing. And Reb Leizer Yudel then started sending Bachrim from Mir to the Brisker Rav. So the whole legacy of Brisk, I mean, that we have from that since then, I mean, Brisk is at the center stage of Habasis HaTorah in Klal Yisrael. It all started with one conversation that took place by the Chanukas Abayis of the yeshiva in Kletsk in 1930, even though 10 years later, the entire the entire Yiddishkeit of Lithuania and Poland and Europe was wiped out, but that's where it had a rebirth. So we have to remember that every downfall is really is just a hakana. Is just a hakana for the next madrega. Like the Baal Shem Tov says on the pasuk, Eis Tzora Hila Yaakov Umimeno Yivasheya. He says that Tzora is also Oisis Tzoyhar. Tzoyhar is a window, like it says in this week's Parshas, Tzoyhar Tase Lateva. He says that in the Tzora there's a window of opportunity. That if you respond in the right way to a Tzora, it will illuminate your life. And it will, like the Tzoyar, either it's an Evan Tova or it's a window. It's a new opening to a higher madrega. So the Eibush is helpful that we should first of all on a very personal level, we should become better people, and that's caring for other people, the living our Tzelem Elokim in a real way, and the Tzelem Elokim is about Chafetz Chesed. It's about giving, like the Rebbeinu Shalom is the giver of everything. We should not be on the taking and the receiving end, but we should be on the giving end. We should care for other people, and it starts with very, very small things. It's not like you can change everything overnight, but every small change that a Yid makes in the right direction is a olam umaloya. So it's say about commitment to limud haTorah, to harbotas haTorah, to supporting Torah and helping people. And the Eibush will help them that we should rise from this terrible matziv. I wish you all a good Shabbos. Yeah.